Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can move to our third topic, I believe we have a presentation from Todd Fine relating to Elizabeth Burger Park and Washington Street. So Todd, why don't we turn it over?
Yes. Okay, let me share the screen. Application. Let's see. Yes, okay. You see the presentation? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Todd Fine. I am a PhD in history and a scholar of Arab American literature, especially one of the Pen League writers, Amin Rahani. Years ago, I was involved in initiating this Al-Qalam monument project, but I'm not currently on the board, and I've never criticized them or had a problem until this incident that I'm about to describe. Some people may not be aware. It actually got a lot of publicity in the Middle East, but it didn't get that much publicity in New York City. That the government of Lebanon, through their cultural ministry and then their foreign ministry, issued complaints about the historical sign for the Al-Qalam monument, and it was removed about 2 weeks after its installation. And then some changes were made without any sort of process, without the community board or any sort of scholarly input. So I'm going to raise some criticisms of these changes, which I think, to me, are something that divide people rather than unite people, despite the intentions involved. I'd also like to note that there are some family members of one of the founders of the Pen League, Abd al-Masih Haddad, his his granddaughter and great-granddaughter, who would also like to speak on an issue that's related to this, which has been reinforced by the sign changes. Now, obviously, this monument needs a historical sign. As you are clearly familiar with, it is these shapes, and it doesn't have any images of the writers, or it's not immediately clear what it's referring to unless you're in the know. So there needs to be a sign. But and I don't believe that the initial sign was perfect or even up to the standards I would have preferred, because it did have this term Greater Syria, which was not fully explained in terms of what that meant. I think it was a little bit provocative without that explanation. And the word Syrian over and over again on the sign might have been seen to some as provocative. And I wish that there had been more context in the original sign. That said, I think that the correction doesn't add any context at all. In fact, removes the little context that was there and makes the situation a lot worse. Now, here's the timeline of what happened. The original sign was unveiled with the artwork on April 30th. In early May, there was pushback in Lebanon throughout the diaspora. Just 2 weeks later, the Cultural Ministry of Lebanon asked for diplomatic action to reverse the sign. The Foreign Ministry then wrote a message saying that they would contact the State Department and the New York City government. They intervened, and then a few days later, the sign was removed. This is not the way we normally do public history or community board one issues, as you know. It's very unusual to have something like this, and I wish there had been more dialogue about what was happening. A replacement occurred in a few weeks without any sort of review at all. The sign came down. The Parks Department worked solely with the sponsoring entity, the Washington Street Historical Society, and then there was a replacement put up in early July without any input. And by the way, still no disclosure of the citations or the scholarly input that went into it in terms of what the changes were made. But we can understand why they made the changes they did. I believe this revision went far beyond what Lebanon asked for. Lebanon requested that the Lebanese identity of these writers be acknowledged and that they be referred to in some cases as Lebanese Americans. But there was not any firm direction that the concept of Syrian identity be removed en masse from the sign. The revisions delete the word Syrian in 5 cases, changed the word 1,200 Syrians to 1,200 immigrants in a formulation that I believe is just blatantly inaccurate, turned a Syrian school that was actually founded by a group called the Syrian Society, just ripped out the word Syrian. And then in what's most objectionable to scholars is sorted writers into categories of being either from Lebanon or Syria. Now, the key thing to note here, and as I can assure you, this is basically the scholarly consensus, is that it is not appropriate to say, when we're referring to the late 19th century, from Lebanon or from Syria as distinct categories. Because at that time, at least in the American formulation, they were all called Syrian. There was no term Lebanese. And the identities of what we now consider Lebanon, the boundaries are very different, because it was only in 1920 when the French mandate created new territories. So to say certain writers were from Lebanon and other writers were from Syria is completely ahistorical, and actually might offend those writers themselves were they to be asked what their identity would be. They might not want to be called Arab, they might want to be called Lebanese, Syrian, we don't know exactly, but it's very inappropriate, and it seems offensive to a lot of people to have that presumption made. And it would be insulting in some cases to Syrians to think that is a problem, to identify those writers as Syrian. So the revision, in my view, even though it's these deletions, it very much changes the entire direction of the sign, going from one extreme to the other. The original language rooted this in the scholarship concept that these are considered Syrians, that they were Syrians at the time. Though all those mentions of the word Syrian were removed, and then the writers were then divided into categories as either being from territories that are now Lebanon or Syria, but with no explanation of why was the neighborhood called Little Syria, or why was there a Syrian identity, or what did that mean at the time? There's no further context to explain that. There's just a clear attempt to assign these immigrants and associate them with the country of Lebanon. So here are the changes that were made. We could go through them, but the key thing is that this formulation, immigrants from Greater Syria, which is a concept that was then defined, is changed to immigrants mostly from Lebanon and others from Syria and historic Palestine, which, as you can see, is a non-grammatical formulation that tries to assert that these are mostly Lebanese, and the Syrian, I think, is a minor part, and then has these non-parallels of a historic Palestine being a concept that was a geographic concept used to define Little Syria, now being associated with modern day countries that create these non-parallel, non-grammatical constructions. And then on the other side, you see the word Syrian, the school that was established by the Syrian Society that Linda Jacobs, the former president of the Historical Society, who's now resigned, had done research on. That Syrian Association is ripped off. And you also see, on the first one, you also see 1,200 immigrants. We'll get into that, but to say the neighborhood has 1,200 immigrants is really unclear, because that is an estimate from 1900 of the number of Syrians, not the extent of the neighborhood, which was much, much larger than that and much more diverse. You also see the additional changes were the writers who were then initially established as a group are now divided into being from Lebanon or from Syria in a way that they might not have agreed with, and from countries that didn't exist at the time that they lived. And also the formulation, which it says Nasib Arida and Nadra Haddad, who were instrumental in the formation of a writers association called the Rabita Qalamiya, is now very problematical, because not only is that grammatical structure very odd, but the founder of the Pen League, Abd al-Masih Haddad, whose family members are here today, is not even mentioned on this sign, the co-founder, and is not even installed on the monument itself, which was shocking to scholars when we saw its unveiling. So I get into, this slide depicts some of that problem with that formulation. Immigrants from Greater Syria, it's non-grammatical. It groups things that are not like it, and there is no concept of why the neighborhood was called Little Syria, especially as you saw the phrase Syrian quarter was also removed. So there's clearly an attempt to excise Syria and not have any more educational content. Again, it misuses this 1,200 figure, saying that the neighborhood known as Little Syria was home to 1,200 immigrants, which is just not accurate. That is a census formulation from 1900 that is specific to the Syrians and not to the number of immigrants at all. Again, deleting the word Syrian erases this institutional identity to just rip out Syrian quarter, which was another term used, and the Syrian school. It's gratuitous in our view. Additionally, that label of just assuming a fixed Lebanon and Syria is really not ahistorical, because at that time, these were very different boundaries within the Ottoman Empire. And there were many of these writers would travel between Nazareth or Homs, Syria, or Beirut. They would universally describe themselves as Syrian, and these borders didn't necessarily exist. They did oftentimes identify with a territory called Lebanon in certain instances, but there was always an overlap with a Syrian identity as well. So it's very ahistorical to make a distinction between Syria and Lebanon as two distinct areas in that period. Additionally, as I said, that new phrasing with that very awkward grouping that assigns Nudra Haddad and Nasiba Rida as responsible for the Pen League, or if it refers to the entire group as responsible to the Pen League, reinforces this problem that is inexplicable, that the founder of the Pen League and a very active publisher named Abd al-Masih Haddad is not on the monument at all, and it's inexplicable. And this new sign, just in the view of scholars and people who know Abd al-Masih Haddad, just sort of digs in the knife on that point. So the sign fails on several levels from an academic perspective. It now has blatant demographic errors. It has this historical context problem. And again, here at Community Board 1, there was no public process, and there is no academic review of this at all. So my position is that there should be an independent working group or a group of scholars who don't have a particular say in this, who are not nationalists, not associated with any government, who would review this sign and create a durable sign that won't offend either side of this dispute, that would give the proper historical context, that would explain the different terms used, explain why these identity categories or these national boundaries occurred as they did, would publish the sources behind these different numbers so everybody could be confident. And we would have something that the millions and millions of people who see this monument to Arab American culture in Little Syria, which is already controversial enough, would not have any more basis for conflict. We shouldn't, move from offending one group to offending another group and offending scholars who are engaged with this topic. So my proposal, my request for your humble consideration is that we treat the installed sign, the replaced sign that was put up a few weeks later, as an interim replacement, not as the final historical interpretation. We encourage the Parks Department to have a group of scholars that would publish its sources, review this, and create a new draft text, and provide public review, returning to Community Board 1 with the proposed final wording. Now, we do know that the Parks Department doesn't have a lot of resources, and I think part of the reason they did the way they did is because they're overwhelmed. But in my view, this is something that is very important. And the fact that a government took, in the middle of a war in their country, took the time to intervene on this, and you have passionate reaction on the other side, shows that it's worthy of a serious thought and shouldn't be done in a lackadaisical, quick way just to appease some very aggressive constituencies. So I printed out I told staff to print out a version of the text if anyone wants to review it. There are also members of the Abd al-Masih Haddad family that I know would like to speak now, to maybe before you can give your comments, to give their perspective on this, because they are more knowledgeable about the exclusion of him specifically, which might also be a possible subject of a resolution were you to listen and hear that out. Thank you.
Great. Are we recognizing the family members to speak?
I guess,
Is that
but are
the
we,
ask?
I mean, is it, I'm sorry, but Andrew, is this something where we're considering a resolution to allow the parks to revisit this with the appropriate scholarly review? Or I'm just not sure where we're going here. I don't think we can get into the politics of this, or I'm not sure where we're going with this as a committee. Do you have a sense of that? I mean,
Well, it's a fair question.
Delighted to hear.
I guess I interpreted this slide 14, as the potential body of a requested resolution.
Yeah.
But I was waiting to see if we were finished with the conversation before putting this to the committee.
Sounds good.
We
So
do
I-
have.
Go ahead.
And
3 minutes.
go ahead.
So can we understand, again, it just seems to me that changing of the sign and, an interim sign and, how this was handled through parks. I mean, I think there's a procedural issue that, when this originally came through, it was unusual way back when. And, it didn't seem like just a, I mean, there were several things that were unusual, but this now is highly unusual. And are you going to ask for the word interim to be put on the sign? So what you're saying is there's a new sign out there right now, right? They took the old sign away and there's a new sign there. And the idea is that there will be a new group to review the sign and replace it at some point in the next couple months. But you want the current sign to have the term interim on it. And then the question is, who at the Parks Department, allowed all of these changes without normal review? Or maybe this is just the way it happens when there's political heat. It's just a confusing situation all the way around. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's confused by how this could happen.
Sorry, is that a question, a statement?
Yeah, I apologize. I think the question is that the resolution that we're writing is also to set precedent in the future to, we're dealing with this issue, but, there may be other issues in the future when, there's signage or, a historic place, how it's handled in terms of, I don't think that, if we do write a resolution, it needs to be bigger than just this one site. It should also be procedurally, how are we dealing with this as a, so we understand what happens and, that there's some sort of, process. I think that's what's happening right here is I'm trying to figure out what is the process and then how did this even come about?
So to Andrew, to Wendy's point, I think we might want to consider that we bring the Parks Department into
Yes.
that very question
Yeah.
of naming in parks, and then we revert back to this. And I think that might be a better approach because I don't think any of us really are well enough informed on the process that you're referring to, or certainly the intricacies of this situation. So maybe that's a start. And also to hear Parks on this, I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, no, and it's a good thought. Look, I wanted to give everyone a chance to speak and share their comments. My own personal view aligns with what you just said, Alice. I don't have enough information. I don't understand all the aspects of how this played out. So to the extent this did channel through parks, I do think we need to hear from parks to get more information and educate ourselves.
It doesn't mean
So I'm not
everyone's-
proposing a resolution this evening until we bring other parties to the table to understand perspectives.
And I say that it is, I understand that it is academic, excellence that you're also talking about here, but, we're a community board that deals with more procedure and process and, you know, how things go about and what is the, you know, I mean, if there's like a ULERP or whatever we're dealing, there's always like a set of rules. And this is obviously way outside of that.
So Andrea, I don't know if you can see, you've got one hand up. So you, like, we usually allow like a 3 minutes, right, Max?
Yeah, we have some
Yeah, I do
questions
want to
from-
be respectful of the people who have joined us tonight, but I do want to also respect time. So
Yeah.
I think you said there were a few family members. I'd like to ask that we limit the commentary to 3 minutes.
We have Joe. Joe has his hand up. We should let him go first.
Yeah, let's get through our committee first, and then we'll invite the family.
Joe, you can unmute.
Joe Lerner?
Joe.
It looks like he's lowered his hand.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Therese? Oh, yes.
Yes.
We can hear you,
Okay.
Joe.
If the signage is factually wrong, we must make a change. And if it's factually wrong, I think we should make some statement that it's a temporary artwork or a memorial. That's the first step. Do we agree that it's factually wrong?
I don't feel educated enough to give a definitive
Okay.
response to that, Joe.
So then you want to go right to getting scholars to answer the question?
Well, I think we have one scholar here tonight who has shared his view.
Yes.
There are other parties involved in what has played out. I don't know if they've engaged scholars at all, but I'd like to hear from them as to what transpired.
Sure.
Well, it is
So I'm
that
not
really
disagreeing.
what-
If at the end of the day, we determine that what's
I
up
don't
is
know if we're
factually
the-
incorrect, we can
Yeah.
discuss a process of addressing it.
Yeah, I don't really feel like we're the right, we're not the right body. To me, that's the city or the park, you know, this is not our job to, I mean, I'm not saying at all that that's not accurate what you're saying. I just don't know if the community board filled with volunteers who, none of us are experts, what we do is represent, asking if, you know, proper procedures, like why is this such special treatment by parks? You know, that's the piece of it, and then we need to say, listen, this needs to be revisited by parks, and quite frankly, it's a good place to bring it to us because this is clearly not right, but then we have to ask our elected officials, we have to elect, you know, the people that are in charge of this, you know, what is going on here?
Before we continue, let's have Therese from Parks make a comment. Therese? Oh, she's weird.
Yeah, and I just learning about all this, and I'm sending back my notes to our Arts and Antiquities Division, who make up these signs through a sign committee, and I'll be asking them to respond. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation and then maybe have this set as a topic at a future meeting and invite them to speak?
Yes.
I think that's appropriate. And Therese, I don't know if you can see from the presentation, but there appears to be a link which does a full text comparison between the original and the current. So that might be very helpful to share with the group.
Okay. So,
I'll share it.
Thank you. So we'll get that over to you. Onesh, can you work to forward that?
Yes, we have Manal.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Todd, for the presentation. I support all of the points that Todd made. I'm going to read very quickly an edited version of a letter that I sent to the Washington Street Historical Society on May 8th. The letter included 44 co-signers, so I'm speaking on behalf of myself and all of them. First, I would like to congratulate the Washington Street Historical Society and the city on the completion of the Qalam Poets in the Park Monument. It is a major achievement, and it will introduce New Yorkers to the important history and literary contributions of early Arab American immigrants. I would like to address the omission of Abd al-Masih Haddad from the monument, which Todd mentioned. Haddad was one of the two original founding members of the Pen League. The other original founder was Nasib Arida. Arida is recognized in the monument artwork, as is Nadra Haddad, who is Abd al-Masih's brother and a later member of the Pen League. But for some reason, kind of very confusing reason, Abd al-Masih Haddad is not recognized, neither on the sculpture itself nor in the accompanying signage text. I'm aware that the monument honors the works of Mahjar, that means in Arabic, immigrant writers of the early 20th century, including literary figures who were not members of the Pen League. But the monument states to be in part honoring the groundbreaking work of the Pen League. So why exclude one of the two original founding members? This becomes a factual and historical error. There's ample space on the monument to include all members of the Pen League, but at a minimum, space must be made for an original founder. Without his inclusion, the monument is not fully representative of the Pen League and remains historically inaccurate. The omission of Abd al-Masih Haddad also hinders public discovery and scholarship surrounding his important literary contributions. He was the founder of the literary magazine and newspaper As-Sayh, which operated in New York between 1912 and 1957. Haddad also authored Hikayat al-Mahjar, the first book of fictional short stories documenting the daily lives and concerns of Syrians in America. He wrote, his singular stories have yet to be translated from Arabic to English, and his omission and erasure further obstruct access, scholarship recognition, and do a profound disservice to efforts aimed at making Mahjar literature available to the English-speaking public. So we urge, myself and the co-signers urge this correction to be made in the monument.
So thank you for that. Have you received a response to your letter? I'm sorry?
You're on mute. She's muted.
Yes, I did receive a response.
Can you share that with the community board, both your letter and the response? Please?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other
I would
questions?
like to say,
Yes. Oh,
I would like to say that
My-
there's one more family member that I don't see here. The name is Dania Abu Shaheen. I'm not sure why she is not showing up.
We have members in the attendee section. I will get to them.
Okay, thank you.
If I can ask, is it going to be a similar message to what you just communicated?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I want to be respectful, but please let's be brief. If it's a reiteration of what you shared with us, I think you very clearly articulated the issues to us.
Okay.
Manoj, are you able to identify?
Yes. Dania, you may unmute. Dania? Okay. While we wait on Dania, we have Bob. Maybe? Bob, go ahead. Hello?
Hi.
Oh,
I'm
there we go.
sorry. Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting this meeting. And Todd, thanks for bringing this up. I'll be very quick. My grandfather was one of the members, a prominent member of the Pen League. He was an Arab American. He referred to himself as a Pan-Arabist, and he came from a time when, as Todd recited, there were no national identities like Lebanese, Syrian. They were not separate from each other. he's rolling in his grave right now with this sign, as is my dad. I just want to read one thing that might give some context to how Todd presented the ideas and how they saw themselves. And again, he considered himself an Arab American. Syria, the idea of Syria or Greater Syria was known as Bilad el-Sham. And I'll recite something that maybe brings breath to the ideas that Todd presented. It's not a nationalist identity tied to one modern state. It's a civilizational identity that connects the people of Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Jordan through a shared dialect, foods, musical traditions, and a shared relationship to the land that existed before the borders imposed between them. Using it as an act of cultural continuity and refusal to let colonial division be the final word on who we are to each other. They were anti-colonialists, they were pan-Arabists, and they were finally Arab Americans. To pigeonhole them is incorrect on many levels and shows a disregard for their own thinking and their own ideas. That's it. I thank you. I appreciate your consideration.
Bob, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dinesh?
Is there anyone else? Oh, yes, Dania, you may unmute and go ahead. Dania, I see your hand again. You need to unmute.
Danya, if you're unable to unmute, perhaps you can just send us an email with the comments you would otherwise have made.
Last one, there's one person in the room with us. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Esther Riegelson. I'm one of the founders of the Friends of the Lower West Side and have lived in the Little Syria area for 43 years. I just want to support, if possible, a resolution from the community board because those changes were made hastily by a foreign government that I think essentially bullied the Parks Department into changing the sign without any foresight. So we want to support any kind of resolution that you might be able to write to change the sign so it's historically accurate and hopefully pleases a lot of people. And I did want to suggest to the Haddad family, the sculptural element would be very expensive to change and time consuming. And I was instrumental in recording the poetry for the app. And I would suggest that perhaps we could add it to the app, the audio, so that it could be introduced into the whole Qalam experience and also put on the signage, if that's possible to do. Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Danya. I finally figured out how to unmute. I'm so sorry. It took me forever. Do I have like 30 seconds?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep it very quick. I want to thank Todd for expressing his views on the importance of scholarship to inform signage in a city as fine as New York. This is about academic excellence. I am the descendant of Abd al-Masih Haddad. But this isn't just about me advocating for my great-grandpop, who did, as my sister articulated, do quite a bit for the literary movement, both in the diaspora here and also in New York City. But the issue is, what is the process for the scholarship that goes into determining what the signs are in a city where people expect to have edification and factual information shared through the New York City parks? I have great respect for New York City parks. So I want to just advocate for the importance of the scholarly process. If there is a resolution or some motion that can be made to figure out how we get to work with the city to make sure that it's factually correct. I know everybody's leery about political involvement and this and that, but I think if we keep focused on the simple issue of there are scholars who study the history of these peoples and their movement from from the Levant to the United States, and they should be informing any signage. Otherwise, the signage is not educational, it's erroneous, and we can do way better than that in New York. Thank you very much for your time. Sorry, it took me so long to unmute.
No, thank you, Tanya. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. So we have Suzanne.
Muted? Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the comments of those who came before me. Thank you for providing an opportunity to tell you about the foundational role. That's the key word here, foundational role of Abd al-Masih Haddad. He's my grandfather, and he played a pivotal role in providing a home, a literal home, and forum for the voices of immigrants from Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. His magazine, Asaya, started in 1912, and particularly the special publications, was the mouthpiece of this nascent community. The voices of these literary figures that we celebrate today would not have easily been heard without this instrument of Asaya. As the co-founder of the Pen League with Nasib Arida, his cousin, these voices had a safe haven to promulgate the beauty of the Arabic language, literature, and national consciousness. Their works are now available to scholars today largely through their publication in these key literary associations and publications. Their work, nurtured through Asaya and the Pen League, is taught today, as my nieces know, in schools throughout Lebanon, as critical in the evolution of Arabic literature. The role of each founder and contributor of this movement needs to be as reflective of their contributions in their adopted home as it is in their regional birthplace. So yes, I certainly support and agree that we do need a scholarly committee to correctly reflect the history that reflects a very large diaspora community today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this information.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Anej, are we good?
We have Wendy.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Are we looking to take the sign down until it can be corrected? Is that what you're asking, or just to fix the sign going forward?
Todd, would you like to answer that?
I think I would personally prefer it to be taken down, just because I think it actually does offend some people. But you know, I don't know how Parks would respond to that.
Is Parks still there? Next to still.
Yeah.
So
Is that an official
Sorry.
request that we would like the sign taken down?
I mean, it was taken down because there were some Lebanese, nationalist groups who were organized and were upset. I mean, I don't think currently the people who are against this sign are not as, aggressive. There's no plans for a protest like they were planning to do, but, it should be, right now it's not very good. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I mean, right now it does identify, it does have some other value because it lists the quotations, and so that would be up to Parks' discretion. But I don't want it to sit there for years and years. I think that it does. I personally think it does damage in the current form.
So if I can just summarize what I think we've agreed in terms of next steps. So Onej, we're going to send Therese a copy of this presentation, and she'll internally coordinate with the Parks team. We potentially have agreed to bring Parks in perhaps at our next meeting, which is in September, if they're ready to respond and discuss this with us, right? We're also going to have and apologies, I don't have all the names written down, but the first family member who spoke regarding the letter that was sent, you'll send that to us along with the response you received from Washington Street Group. I might propose that Todd and team perhaps engage directly with Washington Street and Parks in the interim. Again, our next meeting's not until September, and I don't know how long Parks will require to come before us to talk to us about this process. So that's what I have taken away as next steps. Is there anything I've omitted or anything someone would propose to add from the committee?
Yeah, I think, Andrew, we should ask, who paid for the second sign? Was that the city picked up that cost and it's gonna have to pay for another sign. You know, I just think we need procedural to understand as a committee what happened here. So
Well, that's what I'm hoping to get from Parks when we bring them into the meeting.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Parks knows that, you know, that's the problem as well. You know, there's the historic and the academic piece of it, but I don't really feel like that's our job to, you know, create the sign that's accurate. Our job is to say, why was this done in such a different way?
Okay, I think we've
Great.
done it.
Okay, so thanks to Todd and everyone who spoke this evening. We've mapped out the next steps and we'll move those forward.
Thanks.
Thank you kindly.
Okay,